Before we begin, take a deep breath. What would you do if the person who broke your heart left you their entire empire? Stay with me because this story changes everything. At my ex-wife's funeral, my son stood in front of 200 mourners and called me a disgrace. 45 minutes later, the lawyer handed me control of her fortune, her company, and her legacy. His scream shook the walls. The chapel smelled like lilies and judgment. I sat in the back pew, wearing a suit I hadn't touched in 5 years, trying to be invisible. Around me, polished heels and whispered gossip. Clara Langford was being buried today. A woman they called a pioneer, a queen, a visionary. To them, she was a symbol of success. To me, she was my ex-wife, the woman I loved and lost. My name is Daniel Reed, 65 years old, retired from the city's power plant after 30 years of honest work. I live alone in a modest apartment on Isle of Hope, with a leaky faucet and too many memories. People like me don't end up in billion-dollar boardrooms. People like me get forgotten, or so I thought. To me, she had once just been Clara, my wife, the mother of our son, the girl in the red coat who once threw a business card at a sexist manager and stole my heart in the same breath. I hadn't seen her in 15 years. I wasn't sure why I came. Then my son saw me. "You don't belong here," Nathan snapped, his voice slicing through the service like a blade. "You abandoned her. You abandoned me." I didn't respond. Not because I agreed, but because shame has a long memory, and funerals don't forgive easily. When the service ended, a man in a gray suit tapped my shoulder. "Mr. Reed," he said, "you're required for the reading of the will." He paused, then added, "By name." In her own handwriting, it was Dan Harrison, the family attorney, a man with the kind of voice that could calm storms or deliver them. He had handled all of Langford Group's legal affairs for nearly a decade. And now, apparently, he was the messenger of fate. The lawyer's office wasn't open yet, so I wandered through Savannah's historic district and found myself at a quiet cafe near the river. The kind of place where the coffee's always a little burnt, and the waitresses still call you hun. I ordered a black coffee and took the seat by the window. Outside, the water moved slow and steady. Inside, my thoughts didn't. 15 years. That's how long it had been since Clara and I last stood in the same room. But today, she was gone. And for reasons I didn't understand, she'd written my name in her will. As I sat there watching the moss-draped oaks sway gently in the breeze, my mind did what it always does when it's quiet. It went back to the diner on Broughton Street. It was 1988, raining hard. I was 23, hungry, and halfway through a slice of bad apple pie. She walked in wearing a red coat and enough presence to stop time. That manager didn't stand a chance. He told her they weren't hiring women for night shifts, too much pressure, he said. She looked him straight in the eye and asked, "You afraid of pressure or just women?" Then she laid a card on the counter and left. I don't think she even waited for a reply. I followed her outside. Of course. Who wouldn't? That moment, that fire, it never left her. Clara Chen, back then. Born in California, raised by a single mother who sold homemade candles at flea markets. Clara came to Georgia with nothing but a degree and grit. I came with a work ethic and a stable job offer from the power plant. We were both starting over, in our own ways. She gave me her number. Eventually, our first date lasted 5 hours. We talked about everything film noir, the best sandwich shops, whether ambition was nature or nurture. I told her I just wanted a quiet life. She told me she was allergic to small. We got married in a courthouse ceremony with a $40 ring. She wore white pants and boots. Said dresses were too restrictive. The apartment we shared was drafty and narrow. But ours, she painted the kitchen yellow. I fixed the leaking pipes. She pitched business plans to anyone who'd listen. I read utility meters and watched the neighborhood kids play ball. When she decided to start her own consulting firm, we had $1, $100 in savings, and a folding table from Goodwill. But she had vision. She made her first client sign a contract written on printer paper, held together with a paperclip. And somehow, it worked. Year by year, her phone rang more. First local businesses, then regional clients. Eventually, Clara Langford Consulting Group had its own logo, its own office, its own staff, and suddenly I was the man carrying takeout to the woman on conference calls. I never minded, at least not then. She'd come home glowing, buzzing with ideas and power, like lightning in human form. I'd listen, I'd nod, I'd offer small observations that usually went ignored, not because she didn't love me, but because she had already moved on to the next thought, the next goal. We lived together, but the rhythm was shifting. I woke at 5 a.m. for work. She went to bed at 2 a.m. After Zoom calls with a team in Singapore, I read newspapers with my morning coffee. She scanned economic forecasts and IPO announcements. Her clothes changed tailored suits, neutral tones, sharp heels. I still wore my steel-toe boots and work-issued shirts with my name stitched in red. She hired a cleaning service. I still believed in washing my own truck. She joined executive brunches and mentorship panels. I preferred Saturday flea markets and watching baseball with neighbors. We'd sit at the same dinner table, but live in different timelines. And yet, she still smiled at me in the evenings, still called me Reed in that teasing voice she used only when she was tired and unguarded. I clung to that voice like it meant nothing had changed, but it had, not in a single dramatic moment, but in thousands of small ones. The way she corrected my grammar when I spoke in front of her colleagues, the way she paused before introducing me, like searching for the least embarrassing title, the way Nathan began answering my advice with "Mom says," followed by things I didn't understand. Even our successes were different. When Clara landed a major mining corporation as a client, she celebrated with champagne at a rooftop lounge. When I got promoted to senior technician, I grilled hot dogs and invited the neighbors. She bought Nathan his first laptop before he could ride a bike. She told him, "The future is built by people who adapt faster." I wanted to teach him how to change a tire. She said that was old thinking. And maybe she was right. The world was moving toward her kind of thinking. Sharp, strategic, scalable. Mine was fading, like my work boots and the songs I still played on cassette. And yet, I never stopped admiring her, even when I stopped recognizing the life we were building. Back then, I thought admiration would be enough. But even rivers drift apart slowly, quietly, and without apology. Clara's voice was still in everything: her name on the office building downtown, her quotes framed on the company website, even in the hushed reverence people used when they said it at the funeral. But the Clara I remembered wasn't just a legend. She was a woman who once danced barefoot in our kitchen at midnight, tipsy on boxed wine and victory. The Clara felt far away. The one who replaced her was sharper, sleeker, less interested in small talk, more obsessed with deadlines. Somewhere in between the product launches and magazine interviews, the woman who had once whispered dreams into my neck now whispered stock valuations into Bluetooth earbuds. The change hadn't come all at once. It arrived slowly, like water wearing down stone. It started with silence at dinner. Then came the questions that weren't really questions. "You're still working at the plant, right?" she'd ask, eyes on her laptop. "You haven't considered management certification." And then, one night, she said it outright. "You could do more. Read. If you wanted." It wasn't a judgment. It was an observation. But it stung worse than any insult. I wanted to scream. I already worked 10 hours a day. I kept the house running when she traveled. I attended every parent-teacher conference she missed. I unclogged drains, paid bills, and remembered her mother's birthday. But in her eyes, I had settled. That word echoed in our home like a slur. Settled? Nathan picked it up too. By 13, he was correcting my pronunciation at dinner. By 14, he stopped asking for my opinion altogether. By 15, he looked at me like I was a visitor in a house built for someone else. Then came the party. Clara wanted something grand for Nathan's 15th birthday. She booked a rooftop venue, hired a private chef, invited 20 of her clients and their families. I wanted to grill hot dogs in the backyard. "He needs to network," Clara said, adjusting flower arrangements the night before. "He's 15, I said. "He needs to feel like a kid. This is the real world. Read. He'll thank us later." Us? Like we were still a team, like my voice still counted. That night, I stood in the corner of that glass and chrome venue, holding a soda I didn't want, watching my son shake hands with venture capitalists. Clara moved through the room like a storm in heels, all power and perfection. People looked at her like she'd invented fire. No one looked at me at all. Later, I found Nathan alone on the balcony, staring down at the streetlights. "You okay, buddy?" I asked. He straightened immediately, put on the smile Clara had taught him. "Fine, just tired. You don't have to pretend with me," I said. He looked at me for a long moment, and then he said, "Dad, you don't get it." And that was the moment, not the divorce, not the arguments. That sentence, "You don't get it." I went to bed that night in a guest room that still smelled like paint. Clara came in past midnight, still dressed for the party. Mascara smudged but posture perfect. "Did you enjoy the evening?" she asked. Tone clipped. I hesitated. Then I said it. "He didn't need all that. He needed you." She sighed, long and tired. "You're always looking backward. Tradition. Simplicity. Nostalgia. It's holding him back." "No," I said. "It's saving him from becoming a machine." Her eyes met mine, sharp as glass. "You mean becoming me?" "I didn't say that. You didn't have to." There was a long silence, the kind that bends walls and breaks hearts. Finally, she said, "We're not partners anymore. Reed. You're a memory I can't carry into the future." The words felt surgical, clean, efficient, devastating. I wanted to argue, to remind her of everything we'd built, but I saw in her eyes that she had already left me months, maybe years ago. "I don't want to fight," I said. "Then don't," she replied. "Let's do this with dignity." And so we did. The lawyers met. Papers were signed, assets divided. Clara kept the company, the downtown condo, the new Mercedes, and Nathan's unwavering loyalty. I got the old house on Isle of Hope, my pension, and a handshake from her attorney. The night we finalized everything, I sat alone in the driveway with the car running, listening to a voicemail from Nathan. "Don't take this the wrong way," he said, "but this is better for Mom." He didn't say, "for us," just for her. He didn't call again for 5 years. I didn't reach out, not because I didn't love him, but because I didn't want to be the burden they whispered about at brunch. Time passed. Slowly, quietly, I rebuilt a life around silence and routine, grocery lists, lawn care, a weekly game of chess at the senior center. And Clara kept building an empire. Every now and then, I'd see her in the news giving a speech, launching a mentorship program, posing with Nathan in glossy interviews, always poised, always immaculate. Not once did she look back. Not once did she stumble. Until today, until the funeral, until her lawyer spoke my name like it still mattered. Dan Harrison's office sat in a refurbished Victorian house on Whitaker Street, wrapped in ivy and silence. The kind of building that looked like it had heard every family secret in Georgia. The porch creaked under my shoes as I climbed the steps, my hands sweating even though the air was cool. Inside, everything smelled like old leather and fresh paper. Dan greeted me with a firm handshake and polite eyes. "Mr. Reed, thank you for coming. Nathan is already in the conference room." Of course he was. Dan gestured for me to follow. I moved down a narrow hallway lined with framed degrees and photos of Clara with various city officials, smiling, confident, always standing in the center of every frame. When we entered the room, Nathan was standing near the window, arms crossed, staring out at nothing. His suit was impeccable, his jaw tight. He didn't turn around when I walked in. Dan took his seat at the head of the long mahogany table and opened a thick folder. "Before we begin, I want to acknowledge that this is a difficult time. Clara's instructions were clear and detailed. My job is to execute her wishes faithfully." Nathan let out a soft, bitter laugh. Of course they were clear. My mother never did anything halfway. Dan didn't respond. He simply unfolded the first page of the will and began to read. "This is the last will and testament of Clara Langford, executed on May 3rd, 2024. His voice was steady, legal, rehearsed, but I wasn't listening to the words. I was staring at the ink, the lines on the paper, imagining her hands holding that pen. What was she thinking when she wrote my name? To my son, Nathan Reed Langford, I bequeath the property located at 327 Maple Ridge Drive, along with all furnishings therein. I also leave the sum of $500,000 from my primary investment account. Nathan's head tilted slightly, his shoulders relaxing just a fraction, on the condition that he remain employed by Langford Consulting Group for a period not less than 2 years, or until such time as the company is dissolved or sold. Nathan blinked, slowly. What? Dan looked up. It's a conditional bequest. The money and property are yours only if you remain actively employed with the company. That's absurd, Nathan said sharply. Why would she? She knew I was already COO. Why put conditions on her own son? Dan turned the page. The conditions were added at her insistence. She believed it would ensure continued alignment with the company's vision. Nathan laughed again, but this time it cracked. She didn't trust me. That's what this is. The air in the room tightened. Dan continued. To Daniel Michael Reed, I leave the remainder of my estate, including all financial assets totaling $18.7 million, as well as 65% ownership in Langford Consulting Group and all subsidiaries. Silence. My vision swam. I blinked several times, unsure if I'd misheard. Nathan spun around so fast his chair clattered into the wall behind him. What? Dan didn't flinch. Your mother designated your father as the majority shareholder and primary beneficiary of the company, as well as the executor of her remaining estate. Nathan pointed at me, eyes wide with fury. He hasn't spoken to her in 15 years. He doesn't know the first thing about the business. He was a janitor in his own marriage. I was never a janitor, I said quietly. I worked at the city plant for 30 years. Oh, forgive me, Nathan snapped. The man who kept the lights on wants to run a consulting empire now. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My heart was pounding too loudly to form words. This is a joke, Nathan said. Turning back to Dan, this is clearly some kind of mistake, or manipulation, or he stopped himself, then narrowed his eyes. How do I know he didn't pressure her? Maybe he got to her near the end. Confused her? Dan's voice remained level. Clara underwent a full psychological evaluation 1 month before signing this will. She was of sound mind and clear intention. We have recordings of her legal sessions. Every word was hers. She hated him, Nathan hissed. She called him an anchor, a reminder of who she used to be. I felt like I'd been slapped, but Dan kept going. I understand this is upsetting, Nathan, but I must remind you that this document is binding. Clara's wishes are now law. Nathan slammed both palms on the table, rattling the crystal water glasses. No, I don't accept this. He doesn't deserve any of it. He wasn't there. He didn't build any of this. I did. Dan looked at me. Would you like to respond? I swallowed hard. I don't know why she did this. I didn't ask for any of it. Exactly, Nathan roared. You didn't earn it. You didn't bleed for it. I've been in that company since I was 19. I sacrificed everything to make it grow. His voice cracked on the word, everything. Dan opened another envelope and slid it across the table toward me. She left a letter. For you? I stared at the envelope. My name written in her handwriting. Still graceful. Still unmistakable. Nathan's hands curled into fists. She left him a letter. Dan nodded. It was her express wish that he receive it after the reading. She never left me anything like that, Nathan whispered, almost to himself. Silence filled the room again. Heavy, raw. He took a step back, eyes darting between me and the envelope. Then he turned away, pacing to the far wall. You know what this is? He said softly. It's revenge. Some twisted guilt trip from a woman who could never admit she chose the wrong man to build a life with. He turned around, eyes bright with tears. She picked you again. After all this time, I wanted to speak, to offer something comfort, logic, anything. But what could I say? I didn't understand it either. Nathan's voice dropped. Do you know what it's like to live your whole life, trying to be enough for someone who's already decided who matters more? I nodded slowly. Yes, I said, I do. He stared at me, stunned. Dan cleared his throat. We'll need to begin the transfer paperwork. The board will need to be notified. Nathan laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm sure they'll be thrilled to answer to the maintenance man. Stop it. I said quietly. I'm not here to take anything from you. You already did, he snapped. I stood. My knees ached from the tension. I didn't ask for this. I didn't even know she remembered my name. But for some reason I'll probably never fully understand, she chose me. Nathan turned away again. Then you deserve each other. He walked out, the door slamming hard enough to shake the picture frames. I remained standing, staring at the envelope. Dan exhaled. I'll give you a moment. When he left, I sat down slowly, the leather chair creaking beneath me. The silence that followed was the kind that only happens when something permanent has shifted. The kind that wraps around you like a new skin. I traced Clara's handwriting with my thumb. Still her, still her. My dearest Daniel, if you are reading this letter, it means I've already gone where words and business meetings no longer matter. And this letter is now my last attempt to explain, to reach across the years of silence, and tell you things I never had the courage or clarity to say in person. First, let me say the most important thing. I never stopped loving you. Not through the long, lonely nights when we slept on opposite sides of the house. Not during the bitter arguments. Not even when the papers were signed and we officially became strangers. My love for you became quiet, hidden beneath layers of ambition and pride. But it never left me. I used to believe that love was something that had to be sacrificed in pursuit of greatness. I told myself the business needed all of me, that love was a luxury I couldn't afford. But in these last few years, with the benefit of hindsight and solitude, I've come to realize that the greatest success I ever had was the life we once built together, imperfect. Yes, but real. Daniel, you were the anchor I let go of too soon. You were the steady hand when I chased every storm. I thought I needed to become someone else, to be powerful, less emotional, more aggressive, endlessly driven, and you, with your quiet evenings, your toolbox and your corny jokes, your willingness to find joy in simplicity, you represented everything I convinced myself I had to outgrow. But now I know what I dismissed as mediocrity was in truth peace, integrity, a kind of success that doesn't fit in stock portfolios. And then there's Nathan, our son. I know this part will hurt. I made choices that turned him into a reflection of me, rather than a product of both of us. I taught him to win at all costs, to dismiss softness as weakness. I taught him to lead, but not to love. That is my greatest regret. I pushed him too hard, too fast, grooming him to take over something I wasn't sure he ever really wanted. And in doing so, I stole something from him, his chance to grow into a man with balance, with empathy, with room for others. I saw the way he looked at you, the disappointment, the scorn, and I allowed it. Worse, I enabled it. He doesn't understand the weight of wealth. Not yet. He's always lived with the safety net I constructed. He's sharp, yes, but untested. And you, Daniel, you've been tested. You've lived lean years. You've fixed things when they broke, both literally and figuratively. That's why I left you the company. Not because I think you'll run it like I did, but because I believe you'll run it better, more humanely, more wisely. I've already seen you do more with less. This decision wasn't easy. It's not about punishment or reward. It's about restoration. It's about trusting you to bring balance to a legacy that had begun to tip too far into cold efficiency. You won't be alone. The management team is competent and loyal. I've left letters for them too. They'll help you understand the ropes. All I ask is that you lead with the same values you've always lived by. Humility, patience, integrity, kindness. There were so many things I should have said while I was alive. How I missed the way you used to make me laugh in the middle of a crisis. How I missed the creak of our old couch and the smell of burnt toast on Sunday mornings. How I missed being the woman you believed I was. The success, the accolades, the articles in business magazines. They never filled the space you left behind. If I could do it over, I'd choose more dinners with you and Nathan instead of board meetings. I'd take that camping trip you kept planning. I'd let us be messy and unproductive once in a while. I hope it's not too late for you to find joy again. Use this second chance, not to live my legacy, but to build something entirely your own. Nathan may never understand this choice, Not now, but maybe one day, when he faces a choice between heart and ambition. He'll remember this letter. I trust you to be the father he still needs. Even in anger, show him that forgiveness isn't weakness. Show him what strength really looks like. And if you ever doubt yourself, if the weight of this unexpected inheritance begins to feel too heavy, just remember this. I didn't choose you despite your quiet life. I chose you because of it. Because real power doesn't roar. It stands still, holds steady, and lifts others when the world shakes. Goodbye, Daniel, and thank you for loving me when I was hard to love, for being the man I should have held on to, and for being the steward of this final, fragile gift. With all my heart, Clara. The late afternoon rain pattered against the wide, wood-framed windows of Daniel's small study, each drop a slow drumbeat, echoing the melancholy that had taken up residence in his chest. The light was dim, filtered through gray clouds that made the room feel more like dusk than mid-afternoon. He sat alone in his favorite leather chair, the one Clara had bought him during their 10th year of marriage. The scent of aged paper, rain-soaked air, and old wood created a kind of stillness that felt sacred and sorrowful all at once. Daniel hadn't left the house since the will reading. He had reread Clara's letter several times, each word like a balm and a blade. Forgiveness, regret, and an enduring love wrapped around his chest so tightly that breathing sometimes felt like a conscious act. He had accepted what she gave him, both the inheritance and the truth, but the weight of it threatened to bury him. What did it mean to receive everything from someone who once chose ambition over love? A soft knock on the door pulled him from his thoughts. "Come in," he said, straightening. The door opened, and a woman stepped in, mid-40s, sharp navy blazer, calm, confident demeanor. She looked familiar, but it took him a moment to place her. "Mr. Reed," she said with a soft smile. "It's been a long time." He stood. "Yes? Marianne Holt, isn't it?" She nodded. "Clara's executive assistant for 10 years. Daniel's voice caught for a second. "Of course. Please, sit." Marianne sat down and placed a small leather pouch on the desk. "I wasn't sure if I should come," she said, "but after the reading of the will, I knew Clara would have wanted you to have this." Daniel eyed the pouch. Then "What is it?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Before I answer that, there's something you need to know. Something Clara never told you." Daniel's brow furrowed. "What is it?" Marianne leaned forward. "After your divorce, Clara went through a severe depression. She masked it well, always did, but I was there. I saw the late nights, the weight loss, the panic attacks she tried to suppress between meetings." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "I didn't know," he whispered. "No one did, except her therapist and someone else." Marianne opened the pouch and slid out a stack of weathered envelopes, tied together with a faded blue ribbon. Daniel stared at them. "These," she said gently, "are letters she received. Anonymous letters, full of encouragement, kindness, wisdom. They didn't judge her or pity her. They just saw her." Daniel said nothing, but his breath grew shallow. She clung to these letters. Marianne continued, said they kept her grounded, alive. She never stopped wondering who sent them, and years later, she figured it out. Daniel's mouth was dry. "How, your language, the way you said certain things, phrases you used when you were married. The letters talked about the diner on 3rd Street, the apple pie." He closed his eyes. "I never meant for her to know, but she did," Marianne said. "And when she did, everything changed." She pushed a small flash drive across the desk. "This is the last thing she ever recorded, just days before she passed." Daniel's hands trembled as he picked up the drive. "She asked me to give it to you if you ever came back into her life. I guess she knew somehow you would." Daniel inserted the drive into his laptop. The screen flickered, and a single audio file appeared. He clicked. Clara's voice filled the room. "Hello, Daniel. If you're hearing this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. There's no easy way to say goodbye, especially when so much was left unsaid." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "I've lived 2 lives, one with you, and one chasing something I thought would make me whole. I was wrong about many things, But I was never wrong about you. I know it now. You were the man who sent me those letters. I recognized your soul in every word. Even when I didn't know who had written them, I felt safe, seen, loved. Marianne looked away, giving him privacy. You never stopped caring, Clara continued, her voice softening. Even when I pushed you away. Even when I made you feel small. You never retaliated. You just disappeared. Quietly, with dignity, and that silence, she said after a pause, was the loudest love I've ever known. Daniel felt something shift in him. A dam breaking. I left you out of the company, out of the house, out of our son's heart. But I couldn't leave you out of my soul. And when I looked at Nathan, I saw brilliance, yes, but also something missing. He has your mind, Daniel, but not your heart. There was a beat of silence in the recording, then a sigh. I tried to raise a leader, Clara said, but I forgot to raise a human. I know giving you the company will cause chaos. Nathan will feel betrayed. But I couldn't let it all go to someone who doesn't understand what it means to serve others. You do. Daniel wiped his face with the back of his hand. You were never the failure. Daniel, I failed to see that success without love is just loneliness with a better view. Her voice faltered for the first time. Thank you for those letters. Thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for being the only one who never asked me to be anything more than Clara. The file ended. Silence filled the room like water. Daniel sat still for several long minutes, then looked up at Marianne. She knew, he said. She did, Marianne replied gently. And she loved you. She never said any of this. She didn't know how, Marianne said. Until the end, Daniel picked up the stack of letters, running his fingers over the ribbon. Do you think Nathan will ever understand? Marianne hesitated. He might, one day, when he's no longer chasing your approval or Clara's shadow. But that's his path, not yours. He nodded slowly, the weight inside his chest beginning to lift. If only slightly. I never wanted the company, but maybe, Marianne said, standing. The company needs someone who never wanted it. She walked to the door, then turned back. Thank you, Daniel, for saving her. When the rest of us couldn't. As the door closed, Daniel looked again at the flash drive, then at the view beyond the window. The city lights glimmered like stars, distant, dazzling, but somehow closer than ever. He would carry Clara's words with him, not for pride, not for power, but because someone had finally seen him the way he had always tried to be, a man of quiet strength, a keeper of promises. In the quiet that followed Clara's voice, Daniel sat with the weight of her final truth, one not measured in dollars or legacy, but in love that endured through silence, time, and regret. Some lessons arrive late, but when they do, they cut through everything false and leave only what matters: character, forgiveness, and the courage to love again. If this story touched something inside you, don't wait. Write the letter, make the call, say the words while you still can. Because sometimes the softest voices leave the deepest echoes. Share this story if it moved you. Someone out there might be waiting for a sign to forgive, to return, or simply to be seen.